All right, welcome back. Tonight, we're honored to have with us Daniel Williams, who is a board member of the Transgender Foundation of America, located here in Houston. TFA runs the Transgender Center as well as the Transgender Archives, both also here in Houston. This is the largest archive collection of transgender historical artifacts in the country. Daniel, welcome.
Welcome. It's an honor to be here. And I will say that we usually refer to the archive as the largest modern archive.
Okay.
There was an archive that existed in Berlin during the 1920s and 30s that was destroyed by the Nazis, which was far larger than ours.
Why don't you, if you could, spend a little bit of time explaining to folks what the foundation is, maybe a little bit of its history, and then you can go into the archives and tell us a little bit about the collection.
The Transgender Foundation of America is an organization that has existed in some form or another for over 10 years. We exist to give a voice to the transgender community. There are so few organizations in the country that are specifically designed for and by trans-identified individuals. Most of the time they're lumped in with general LGBT organizations.
Right.
And often that voice becomes suppressed within those organizations. By having an organization that exists to advocate, to assist, and to create a representation for trans-identified individuals, we're able to do things that other organizations aren't.
So, how long have you been in Houston?
Personally, I've been in Houston just over a year.
Well, I mean, the organization, how long have you been active here in Houston?
For over 10 years at this point.
Okay. And it's officed right here in Montrose.
We are right here in Montrose over at 604 Pacific.
So can you tell
Courtney.
me, like, if I went in to the archives, what kinds of things would I expect to see?
Well, the archive is open to the public Monday through Friday from 1 to 5, and we have a wide range of items dating back. Actually, the oldest item we have in the collection is from their coins struck by a Roman, one of those little pieces of history that no one ever tells you. And that's really why we have the archive, because people aren't told this history. Trans people aren't generally raised by trans-identified people, and so they grow up not knowing that there are other people like them, that there have always been other people like them, and that they are the inheritors of this rich and vibrant tradition. I actually brought something in to share with you guys from the archive. It's this is a newspaper from 1834, the New York Transcript, and I'm holding it in my hand here, and it's the actual 1834 paper. It's an article, the second part of a two-part article called Man Assimilation, which is the apparently Glenn Beck of the period complaining about how men are becoming these feminized, wussy things, and we have to keep women from taking over our world.
Wow.
And he quotes an article from a Maine newspaper, the Maine Advertiser. The article he's quoting was entitled Marriage Extraordinary. I'm going to read a little bit of it here. In Woodstock, New Brunswick, Mr. J. Munson to Mr. Henry Allen. So he's recording Mr. Munson to Mr. Allen's marriage. And down at the bottom of the article, he went over to Woodstock with his employer, put on women's clothes, and was married to him as a miss. It seems she, and it's interesting, the author here switches pronouns. After referring to the individual as he throughout the article, he switches to she after mentioning the marriage. It seemed she had been engaged to Munson in Connecticut, but her father refused to sanction the match. She ran away and ended in courtship in the above manner. So we have an 1834 an actual newspaper recording a male-bodied individual who identifies as female and marries a male-identified individual. Really incredible, considering so often we hear from people that this new crazy trans thing and people want to redefine what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman, and we don't know where you came from with your newfangled ideas. This isn't a new idea.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is the first time I was asked the question, which gender pronoun do I prefer? I was sort of taken aback, but then I realized, that's a really great way. And so, for people out in the public that are around people that, how should we approach it? If we're dealing with people, do you just ask their gender pronoun, or what's the comfortable way to do it?
Well, it should be said that transgender is a very broad umbrella term that refers to anyone for whom the gender they were assigned at birth doesn't encapsulate who they are. I mean, the first thing that when a baby's born, the first question everybody asks is it a girl or is it a boy? And we don't do genetics testing, we don't do brain scans, we hold the baby up, we look at its genitals, and we say, oh, that looks like it's male, so we're going to say it's a boy, or that looks like it's female, so we're going to say it's a female. And for trans-identified people, that assignment at birth doesn't describe who they are. For some of them, they were assigned male at birth, and they feel they're female. For some, they were assigned female at birth, and they feel they're male. But for many trans individuals, it's that box doesn't completely describe who they are. Maybe they're male most of the time, but sometimes they're female, and they need to be able to express that. Maybe they feel like they're neither male or female, but somewhere in between. Maybe they feel like they're neither male or female, and they're non-gendered. Anyone who feels that box, that boy or girl that we get assigned when we're born, doesn't describe who they are, that individual fits under the trans umbrella. Which is why you're clearly a female-identified individual, you dress in a feminine manner, but that doesn't mean that your entire identity is female. And so, yes, it's completely appropriate to, in a polite way, ask someone how they would like to be referred. In the same way that it's appropriate to ask someone, my name's Daniel, I introduce myself as Daniel. Oh, do you prefer Dan, Danny, or Daniel? I prefer Daniel. And you can tell when someone's trying to cause you a problem and when they're not trying to be mean. It's the same sort of thing. I think the real key is to be respectful of how people wish to be understood.
Daniel, I have a question for you. Earlier in this interview, you stated that a lot of transgenders grow up and they don't have transgender parents. What is something that I guess a parent could do that could be more open, or that could help a child that is transgendered to discover their own path and identity?
Well, and I think a lot of the same things that would apply to how to help any child understand their own identity. Don't create the clear rules about boys do this and girls do that, and you can't be interested in cooking if you're a boy, or you can't be interested in football if you're a girl. And I know there are a lot of women out there who are sitting at home going, well, of course. Why would you ever tell a girl that? But we had an incident in Long Island just a couple weeks ago where a man beat his child to death for acting like a girl. People need to be reminded that these ideas about what a woman is and what a man is, they're ideas that we impose on children. Children know who they are. You don't have to tell them who they are. So I would say that if a child comes to you and says, Mommy, I think I'm a girl, not a boy, or I think I'm a boy, not a girl, that's great, honey. I love you no matter who you are. And that's all any child really needs to hear.
You brought an interesting point about history. So could you give us sort of like a historical maybe timeline of as far back as you know, if you can, regarding transgender? What's the earliest you know?
I would have to start with the Egyptians.
Okay.
Actually, who did have a class of recognized priests who were male-bodied individuals that were presented as female. In modern history, you don't have the term transgender isn't even created until the 80s. Transsexual is used. Hermaphrodite is often a term that's used in the 19th century to refer to people that we would today refer to as transgender. And much of the community identity was whole and part of the gay identity. And so you see the people who were at Stonewall were very gender non-conforming. You see the individuals who were at the Compton's cafeteria riot were very gender non-conforming. Most of what created the gay culture throughout the first 2/3 to 3/4 of the 20th century were people who moved outside of our typical gender rules. It's not until the 1970s and into the 80s that the gay and lesbian community moved away from the transgender community and started rejecting sissy boys and butch girls, that that identity of trans starts to come forward.
Daniel, before we run out of time, and then we can come back, I think this discussion's been very interesting and informative. Can you give us a little bit more of the, I guess, details of the archive, where it's located, hours of operation? Again, is there a website, that kind of, how folks can get more information?
Absolutely. The archive and the center is located at 604 Pacific. That's in the Montrose neighborhood. We are open Monday through Friday from 1 until 5. The website is tgctr.org. That's Transgender Center, tgctr.org. And in addition to information on the archive, there is a wealth of resources on trans history, political movements and issues going on, legal issues that trans people...
All right. Hey, Daniel, it has been a real pleasure. We'll have to have you back again very soon, and I hope everyone takes advantage of this collection. It's one of a kind.